Thank you so much. So not right here.
Not right there.
That's good. Okay. We'll crop all of that out.
Really?
Okay, I think we're ready to get started. Hello and welcome to the Probation Poster Child. We are thrilled to be here today and presenting and talking about what we have to talk about today. My name is Stephanie, and I'm a probation officer for the Coconino County Adult Probation Department in Flagstaff, Arizona. I've served with the department since 2008, holding various positions, which led to my current position as standard probation officer in the field. Hi and welcome, Jenny! Let's see. The three of us firmly believe that investing in another person can go a long way to helping that person make lifelong behavior modification. So today we want to share two very personal stories of a former probation client and his probation officer. And we have 1 short hour to do that. So I get to be the gracious timekeeper. And first, I have the great privilege of introducing Summer Glenn. She has been an adult probation officer since 2005. She currently serves as lead probation officer in our department. She works to build positive working relationships with clients and has supervised various demographics, including interstate compact, reservation caseloads, in addition to high and low risk individuals. She is both a motivational interviewing instructor and moral recognition therapy facilitator. She currently serves in our pre-sentence division and crafts reports for the court so they can determine if an individual is appropriate for probation. She also identifies behavioral drivers to help inform the supervising officer of areas of need for the client. She is oftentimes the first contact and first exposure people have with probation. Morning! Hi, that's me. Our second guest speaker today is Justin Benjamin. He's currently a program project specialist for the Arizona Department of Corrections. He recently applied for project manager for recovery support specialists throughout the state of Arizona. He previously offered peer support at Northern Arizona Substance Abuse Services for 3 years. He has mental health technician experience at the Guidance Center in both Flagstaff and Phoenix. He served as forensic peer support specialist at Hope Lives in Phoenix and Flagstaff. Prior to all of these amazing things that he is currently accomplishing in his life, he was a former inmate of the Texas Department of Corrections. And he successfully completed probation with Summer Glenn. So, Justin, we're so honored to have you speak with us today. What do you want to share?
Thanks, Stephanie. I'm going to read some opening remarks, I guess. So you've all come here to hear the good stuff. So what is the good stuff? Is the good stuff the drug addiction, the kidnapping, the assault, the murder, the rape, neglect, the abuse, the years in prison, jails, hospitals, and institutions? Or is the good stuff the miracle births of children, the restoration of rights and liberty, and the broken relationships that seemed too far gone to restore? What about the completion of dreams and the reaching of the great unknown? As we call it, the great unknown, to me, that's the good stuff. That will always be the good stuff. Well, I stand before you here today, a man with a journey that includes shattered and brokenness and complete hopeless view of the world and myself in it. So to some, that's the juicy part. What I found in that part of the story was willingness. I also stand here completely restored, and when I say completely, I mean it. I can give you 3 examples of the restoration in my life. So, can everyone hear me? Okay? Whenever I was, so first I want to stop really quick and tell you what the Maricopa Reentry Center is. That was a really nice intro. What I do for a living today, how I make my my living and support my family, is I work for the Arizona Department of Corrections, and that's a beautiful thing to me and my family because I was an inmate in the Arizona Department of Corrections as well as the Texas Department of Corrections. Today I work and I direct, I lead an entire program. I have a unit. It has 50 inmates or offenders in that building, and I provide psychoeducation and soft skills, leadership skills. I basically run a program by myself. I have the support of CO3s and my program manager above me, but it's a beautiful thing, and it's something that speaks volumes about what the Department of Corrections really believes, because for years I stood and believed that there was no backing behind what they said to the community. If you believe in somebody, give them a job, help them out. But whenever the Department of Corrections started to hire ex-felons and offenders, they started to put their money where their mouth is, and that spoke to me, and it changed me. It changed my belief about myself and how I fit in the world, and it changed my belief about the Department of Corrections. And I'm able to referently pass that on to other inmates and offenders. So my first interaction with law enforcement was at the age of 4. My father was a 3-time felon. The first time I ever had a run-in with the law was whenever my dad was in a high-speed chase with the police. It was an undercover drug sting, I suppose. I don't know the right language for it. And we were in a high-speed chase. I was sitting in the front seat of a car, and all of a sudden we slammed on the brakes and jumped out, and he threw me under his arm. And as he ran, I can remember my head bouncing and looking at the parking lot and all the cars in the vehicle and hearing the voice of the man saying, "Freeze, get on the ground!" And I'm 4. My dad sat me down, he looked me in the face, and he said, "Run home." We were close enough to tell a 4-year-old to run home, I guess, but at the same time, you got a guy, anyhow. The officer picked me up after they arrested my dad, and he tried to tell me everything was okay, that it was going to be okay, that we got him, and you're going to be safe. And as anyone can just imagine, that was traumatic. I saw my dad being handcuffed, held to the ground, guns, officers everywhere. It changed the way I viewed law enforcement. Most kids grow up and they think, I want to be a police officer, I want to be a fireman. I didn't get that. I didn't have that opportunity to see the world through that lens. I continued to go through a life where my mom and my dad were being taken away, but I never had like a DCS or CPS experience. I just did not like law enforcement. I didn't like authority. But I wasn't a bad kid, right? I played football in Texas. I did great. I had good grades up until the parties started and the drug addiction started to show its ugly head. And eventually I found myself out on what I called hitting a lick. We were out hitting a lick one night, and I ended up assaulting 5 Arlington police officers whenever they came to apprehend me, and now I was facing 5 felony charges at the age of 17. So I went through that process. That's a really long process, and I'm going to tell you it took me 20 years to make it through that process. I served time in shock incarceration, county jails that are worse than prisons, multiple prisons, 5 yards closed custody. I didn't think I was going to get out of prison. When it was time to be discharged, I was kind of sitting there wondering if I was getting reclassified for another charge they were going to pick up on me. It was just a very hard time in my life. So in 2007, I was in a crack house, and I got a knock on the door. We got a knock on the door, and this guy said, "Is Justin Benjamin in there?" And I was like, what is that? And he stuck his foot in the door and pushed his way in. And it was my best friend. It was a person who I'd known for a very long time from the state of Texas, and he had set out to find me, and he found me in that house, and he came in and he said, "Get your stuff, we're leaving." So I grabbed my trash bag full of crap, and I threw it over my shoulder, and I jumped in his pickup truck, and we headed down to Tucson. And I was like, "How did you find me?" And he said, "Don't ask questions, man." And eventually, he explained it to me when we went on a vacation with our families in my newly recovered life. He told me this story. But anyhow, we got down to Tucson. One day we're driving. He was taking me to work. He was carrying me along with him so we could do handyman work, basically. He was a contractor. So we're driving down the road. He looks over at me and he says, "What are you going to tell the cops when they pull us over?" And I said, "Why would you say something like that?" He said, "Well, there's been a police officer following us for about 1.5 miles, and I'm pretty sure we're about to get pulled over." I said, "Well, I'm going to tell him the truth because I'm tired of running." And so when those lights lit up, some people say that there's a level of anxiety, that fight or flight moment kicks in, and you're scared, and you don't know what's going to happen. But I had a little bit of peace right there. I had a choice to make between excitement and anxiety. It's all the way you look at it. And in that moment, I looked at it as the opportunity to not have to hide from my consequences, not have to hide from the price that I was going to be paying now for the crimes that I committed. So I went into Tucson County Jail, Pima County Jail, and I got sentenced to 24 hours in jail by the judge. And I said, "Excuse me, ma'am?" And she said, "Well, do you have a problem with that, Mr. Benjamin?" And I said, "No, ma'am, no." And so I walked out, I was excited, that willingness, it quickly went away, right? Once I was told I was going to be released, oh man, I'm going to get back there. I'm going to start doing my thing again. And so I ended up getting into the cell block, and I didn't want to have anything to do with anyone. I only needed to do 24 hours. Well, I had to come out, and I went down to the table there, and at the table, an officer comes by and says, "Excuse me, sir, can you check on my release status? I'm supposed to be getting discharged from this institution in about 24 hours. He says, "Great, I'll check on it." Walks upstairs, gets attacked, and gets beaten. Gets pulled into a cell, gets jumped, gets attacked. I'm pretty experienced at doing time, and when stuff like this happens, it gets really ugly. So I walked to the front of the pod, I laid down and put my hands behind my back, or behind my head, and crossed my feet. Well, they came in and immediately scooped me up first thing because I was the last person to talk to this officer. They threw me in a dark cell, they put spotlights on me, they started inspecting my tattoos, asking me all kinds of questions about my gang affiliations. Just craziness, right? And I was scared to death because I was like, "Hold on, you got the wrong guy. I'm supposed to be getting out in 24 hours. What are you doing? No." They threw me into SEG I was in SEG for about 90 days. And in that time, I don't know what the law of extradition is. I was in there for however long it took them to extradite me. I was sitting in that cell in that concrete cage, and that's where I became completely broken. That's where I found out that I was institutionalized, and that if they were to roll out the red carpet and say, "Here you go, Mr. Benjamin, be on your way. Just don't ever come back." I was completely incapable of doing that, and I had no means of staying out of jail or staying out of the dope house. That brokenness, that level of hopelessness is what brought me to a state of willingness. And I think that's what we all look for in people that we try to serve and help, is like that willingness. So, one of the greatest parts of my experience was whenever I met Summer Glenn. I came through the process there, and I ended up getting offered probation. Long story short, I walked into her office, and I met her, and she said, "You're going to do 4 years of probation." And I looked at her, and I said, "Is there any other way? Because I cannot do 4 years. I don't even know if I'm going to make it through the week, And she said, "We can do this together." That moment where she was brutally honest with me, there was a lot of things said in that office, but I can tell you the message that was sent. If you try and you communicate with me, I will try and I will do my best to help you not go back. That's what I heard, and that's what I believed. So I was out for about a week, I think, and I very quickly violated my terms and conditions of community supervision, and I was basically going to get dunked on my head. She didn't dunk me on my head. She showed me undeserved grace. On paper, I'm just a recidivator. That's all I am. I'm a recidivator. I'm someone who's been institutionalized. I have nothing but the stuffings of somebody that should be locked away and kept locked away. But she saw something else, right? And then through a process, I began to believe what she saw really existed inside of me. And I had a lot of shame. I mean, from the age of 4, I had shame. I was ashamed. Where's your dad? Oh, I used to tell people my father played football for teams and he traveled. I make up these elaborate stories because I was so ashamed of who I was and where I came from and what my life really looked like. Through the process with probation and going through recovery, I no longer had to be ashamed, and I learned that I was worthy of freedom. I learned that I had a story, like I'm sharing with you guys, that just because it's ugly, it doesn't mean it's terrible as long as it ends in, and today, I'm a sober member of the community that gives back and adds and packs into the stream of life. And so, her voice, her ability to coach me and lead me and allow me the room to fall a little bit and get back up. One of the things that I try to really explain to people is that F-E-L-L. We fell. People like me fell. We fell down. We got hurt. We bumped our head. We scraped our elbows. We emotionally wounded ourselves and others around us. But we never gave up as long as we're not dead or trying to die, right? And so she was there to remind me of that. So today, the message that I'm trying to just convey to you guys is in regards to the incarceration in my life is that I went through a shameful place. And shame tells me that there's something wrong with me. But I just did something wrong. I'm not broken. I just messed up, right? My actions weren't in line with the expectations laid out for me, right? So I was able to walk out of that shame and into freedom. And I literally live free. I text her on the road a couple weeks ago. I was overwhelmed with joy because I realized the things in my life, the way that I live, the things that I've established, they can't be taken away from me. Freedom is something that we build. We have to build freedom. And freedom can be yanked away in an instant, but it takes a long time to build it up. And the things that I've built up, there's no reason for anyone to come along and steal it away from me again. Because I've aligned myself with a different set of morals and values and behaviors. And as a result of that freedom, I'm able to give it back and create sustainability in our community. I'm able to educate other inmates and offenders. I get to travel across the state of Arizona all the time. Not just to tell my story. I don't even have to tell my story anymore. They know who I am. I'm there to educate them. I'm there to tell them that, hey, you can also do exactly like I have and thousands of other men are doing today. There's awesome opportunities whenever people like Summer and all of you believe in people like me who've gone down a path and they need help. So I also want to tell you about a dream. So dreams are something that we lose in incarceration, just like freedom. That's one of the biggest things. Whenever I came home from prison, my dad said, "What are you going to do, son?" I said, "Well, Dad, I'm going to play indoor football." I was a really great athlete. And he said, "No, you're not. You're going to get a job. You're going to get a place. Get your head out of the clouds." Literally what he said to me. "Get your head out of the clouds, boy. You ain't going to play no football." And I said, okay, as I felt like totally defeated by the man I looked up to most of my life. And I stopped pursuing it. Eventually I met this girl, and her name is Mercedes. Her name is now Mercedes Benjamin. Whenever we first met, I saw this girl and I thought, wow, if I could have the opportunity to just appreciate that person for what they're worth, it would be fulfilling. That, I think, is that love. I felt love at first sight for this person. She's my wife now. We have 3 beautiful children. I have a total of 5 kids, and I'm a good father today. I show up. I'm consistent. So back to the dream thing. So, and without my wife's help, I wouldn't have a relationship with my daughter, who's now 21 and going to make me a grandfather this year. My son, who's 14, they're just amazing relationships that person reverently helped me believe in my ability, right? She told me, she asked me, "Why aren't you playing football?" And I said, "Because I can't." And she said, "Why not?" And I said, "I don't know." And so she pushed me. She inspired me. She questioned my beliefs. She urged me to reach out and give a little bit more effort. And eventually, I started playing football for the Arizona Football League. It's a semi-pro club league, and I played for 3 or 4 years, and that's where I met Stephanie. And I played a lot of, I don't think I really got to sit at all, maybe punt return, and I was very hard on myself. And I remember there were times whenever I felt like there was nothing I could do to help the team, or that there was no way we were going to be able to come back from this, this really hard series or whatever, and Stephanie would always come over next to me with like that Spitfire attitude. "Come on, Justin, we can do this," and just her energy and the way she believed in me and believed in the team, it was so contagious. And I had no idea that she was a parole officer. I had no idea. But she's became like woven into the fabric of my life. So the thing about going back and playing football, the reason that it's important to my story is that it was something that I thought was completely impossible. First, I thought it was impossible for me to stay out of jails, prisons, and institutions. And that started to happen. And then I said, okay, let's take this other baby step and let's pursue this dream of playing football again. And I was able to do that. I was able to build my self-efficacy. I was able to build my belief in my ability to create change that I wanted to see. And it started to compound in my life. And my life started to take off and just launch in a direction that I had no idea was even on my thought window, right? I hadn't chartered this place. This is the great unknown. And now I want to tell you the last part of my story that is probably the most beautiful part for me. Whenever I was in second grade, I found out that I had a brother and that he was adopted. And I spent the whole, I would say from 8 until, so I spent 30 years wondering, thinking, shaming over this brother and this relationship and how it would never, I tried all kinds of different stuff. I didn't know it was ever going to happen. I even had this, I don't know if the mind and drugs and what it did to me, but I had this memory. He tells me that that I just made it up. But I had this memory of one night, I get a knock at the door, and my friend comes over. I'm in a drug bender, doing a lot of cocaine. I had a lot of, there's billions of traumatic events in my life, and so I was dealing with one of those, and that's how I coped, whiskey and cocaine. It seems to just numb the brain somehow. I think cocaine is a powerful drug. Anyway, so I get up off the couch. My friend says, hey, your brother's here. I says, okay, well, let him in. And he says, well, it's not Tex. I said, well, who is it? He says, his name is Ryan. And my gut just dropped because I knew my brother's name. So I got up and I opened that door, and that adrenaline, that just all that cortisol coursing through my body, I opened the door and I saw this guy standing there in front of me. And then that was all I remember. I woke up the next day, and there was glass on the ground in the parking spot out front of my apartment. And I said, what's this? You know, it's all my friends. And they said, you don't remember what happened? And I said, no. That's why I'm asking you, what's this? And they said, well, some guy came over and said he was your brother, and you beat the living crap out of him and told him to never come back again. So the way that I dealt with that is I started to take more cocaine and drink more whiskey so I didn't have to feel that way. And it perpetuated its way all the way through until I was able to maintain and find sobriety and achieve recovery and find another way through life. And about 3 weeks ago, I got a call from a family member that says, hey, I think I found your brother. And so I jumped online and I looked at the picture and I found out that my brother existed. Not only does he exist, he was in the X Games for 5 years. He's now a Cirque du Soleil performer in Las Vegas at the Beatles' Love Show. He's done over 6,000 shows. And so me and my brother and sister, we drove down there and we met for the first time. And I think I unfolded a part of my brain I didn't even know existed. I have literally become totally free from guilt and shame and remorse, I feel. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Knowing that I'm worthy of his love and worthy of belonging in this family that we're building together, it's fulfilling. It's powerful. It's what I've looked for all my life in drugs and alcohol and relationships and acceptance from crime and other things like that. And I've been able to find it in relationships with people like Summer and Stephanie and a lot of you guys. I've never even interacted with you, but I can guarantee if we did spend time together, we would just continue to build each other up and edify one another and strengthen our effort. And so I just want to close by saying, if I knew with certainty that this is where I would be today, when I was sitting in that office with Summer, I probably wouldn't have stepped into this because it's so scary and it's so powerful. And for me to get to be in a room that's full of people that believe in me, it blows me away because I couldn't even believe in myself 12 years ago. I'm in Miami, Florida. I'm a kid from Dallas, Texas, who grew up in motel rooms, watching people shoot drugs into their veins. And today I'm sober, and I add to the stream of life, and I pack into my community. I'm a pillar today because you believe in me and because you lead us. So I would like to, oh, we're not going to do video yet. Okay, so that's all I have, and thank you for listening.
In the middle of the presentation.
Justin, yeah, we're just gonna move this table really, really quick. Yeah, a little bit more, so go this way. Okay, so thank you, Justin, for sharing that powerful story with us. We really appreciate it. Right now, what we wanna do is transition into a dialogue, because we're here to talk about the effective strategies that Summer utilized to help Justin do what he just talked about doing, and it's such an important conversation for us to engage in, because this is how we really learn. We want to know what worked for you so that we can take it back home wherever we live across the country and do that as well. So, Summer, I guess my first question is for you.
Real quick, do you want me to stand or sit? What do you guys want? Whatever you want. Stand. All right. Got it. Go for it.
Do you remember the first time you met Justin?
I do. Actually, we had a picture of it up there a couple slides back. That was, I took that picture of him on the left. Just looks a little skinny. Fresh out of jail. Probably a little high. Yeah. Yeah. That picture is dated September 23rd of 2007. So this was 11 and a half years ago. That was me, a little younger. Right. That is my office, or my old office. I do remember when I met him. At the time I was working a high-risk DUI caseload, and so all of the folks that I was connected with professionally were all high-risk DUI offenders. And he was coming through for an aggravated DUI, and in Arizona that means you have to have like 3 or 4 DUIs within a short amount of time in order for it to be a felony. So he was coming to me with a felony DUI. He had had prior unsuccessful stints on probation failures. And I remember I read his file. That was something that I always did. I would read his file, I would read his pre-sentence report, and try to get an understanding of who was about to walk in. And I read his file and I thought to myself, I'm not gonna lie, he ain't gonna make it. There's no way he ain't gonna make it. He's been a justice-involved individual for more than half of his life. There was no indication in that pre-sentence report at all that he had any willingness to change. I couldn't grab onto anything in that report. All I saw was destruction and deviance, okay? And he was young. And sometimes we know, like those young males that come on probation, they're really impulsive and it takes a while. Sometimes it takes some time. So he came in, I introduced myself, I was much younger, and he said, Summer Glenn. I said, Summer Glenn, that's my name. He goes, are you related to, Sergeant Glenn in the jail? And I smiled and I said, maybe. He goes, oh, I ain't messing with you. It's my husband. We live in a small community. His body language, I mean, we sat and we talked and I explained his conditions of probation to him and everything. His body language, he just didn't want to be there, and I could feel that. He wanted to leave, he wanted to find the nearest exit, he wanted to cross me off of the short list of things he had to do that day and get me out of the way for another day. He was very disengaged, and just coming here was another hoop he had to jump through. And I could feel that. I could see that in his body language. I could see that in the very limited amount of information he wanted to give me, or when I would ask a question, it was just like a response. So that was my first exposure to Justin.
So Justin, what was your first impression of Summer?
That she was young and she was going to be easy to get over on.
Say that again.
When I saw Summer, I saw a young person who was going to be pretty easy to manipulate, I guess, I don't know, to work.
Okay.
That was the basic read I got.
So I kind of want to backtrack a little bit. How old were you when you entered the system?
My first felony, I was 17 years old.
Okay. And so when you finally made it to us, what about summer supervision worked for you?
Summer asked me pretty frequently, how are your kids doing? When I came to her office, the first couple of questions that she had for me had absolutely nothing to do with my urine or a halfway house or any of these other check boxes that I'm pretty certain today that are on a office visit checklist. She wanted to know how I was handling my thoughts and my beliefs and how they were changing, what was going on inside, not what these external things, these drivers that I thought were more important. She wanted to show me through the way she believed in me, I think, that I was more than just a checkbox.
So what were your expectations of Justin?
I expected him to lie from the first day until the last. That was an expectation, because that's reality, right? So when he did, because I'm sure he did, I never took that personally. That doesn't belong to me. That's him. That's his story. At first, compliance was an expectation. But I quickly learned that when I thought that I had the power in this relationship, things were going to go really bad really fast. Because I don't. We don't. We don't get to make choices for people. They get to make their own choices.
So how did you balance that level of accountability and still believe or trust in your client?
So I had expectations of honesty and vulnerability, and I expected him to let me in here a little bit. So when I would ask questions about, tell me about Anthony. Anthony is his 14th birthday.
She knows his name. That's a big deal.
How's Anthony doing? Is he in preschool yet? Where does he go to school? How often are you getting to see him? Do you get to talk to him on the phone every day? Are you hoping for a little bit more there? Is there something we can do together to try to help support that? How did I balance the level of accountability and hold the line with him? You guys, the balance is built in. I never worried about it. I never worried about, am I getting too close? Am I straying too far from what my job is? Because the balance is built in. We have those court requirements. We have the rules in front of us. We know what our expectations are. He knew what my job was. I can still connect with him as a person, and he knows dang well that when he violates probation, I'm probably gonna take him to jail. I'm gonna deliver sanctions because that's my job, because I care enough to do that to help him. So I never worried about having been too close or too personal, because I had a job to do, and I held that responsibility very closely, and that was important to me.
And I think the way that she carried herself with the ethics and the values, it's what helped me be a professional in this field. She demonstrated to me that the only people that are gonna stop and reduce recidivism are gonna be the offenders and the inmates. The way that she carried herself as a professional, it made it easy for me to look up to her and to ask her for help and guidance in places where I never thought I would reach out to someone who's a correctional professional.
Was there ever a time that you did try to get away with something? How did you ever manipulate your PO?
So there's, we're not gonna talk about
We want to know the dirty.
So there was this guy. So we used to do a lot of drugs together, and we used to sell and do a lot of other crimes together. And he approached me, and he's dead now. He overdosed on morphine patches. That's sad. He came to me and he said, "Hey, you're gonna get high with me right now." And I said, "No, I'm not gonna get high with you ever. I'm gonna do this. I'm sick of it. And he showed me his pistol and he said, I'm gonna beat you down for, you know, in the most PG rated version. And I said, well, get to whooping, right? After a minute or so, he came over, we embraced, he gave me a hug, and he says, hey man, I hope you can do this. I hope you can make it. I hope you can stick to your guns and survive it. Pretty shortly after that, probably a week later, he calls me up and I reach out to him. He gets in touch with me because I really needed to shoot a weapon. Does anyone here know what it's like to really need to fire a weapon? I'm sure you all know what that feels like, you know. So addicts and alcoholics and criminals have that urge too. I couldn't just walk in and grab a weapon off the shelf, so I needed to get in touch with the guy who had them all. So I reach out to him. He says, yeah, man, we can go shooting, but you're gonna get high. And I was like, no, I'm not gonna get high, man. I'm not gonna get high. And eventually he told me if I just took a couple shots of whiskey with him, that we could go out and shoot. And so I did it. I threw back some whiskey, we went out to the range, and I couldn't even enjoy myself. That's the worst part about it. I was so ashamed. And I couldn't even stop thinking about everything that was going on and how I'm sabotaging it for this. It wasn't what I needed. That's the problem. I think that if I could share with you what an addict goes on in an addict's brain, I need an experience. I need to come out from underneath that water that I'm drowning in, and the only way to do it is to have an experience right now. And that brain just tells you I need experience now, but it's a process. And I luckily I don't think I might have diluted or whatever.
Missed a lot.
I could have missed or diluted there.
Diluted and missed a lot.
There were times. They usually involved a girl or an old friend.
Was there anything that you ever put your foot down specifically on and insisted Justin do?
Yes. Before I answer that, you know, you sharing that experience of drinking and guns and all of that on probation, clearly you would have known that was a non-negotiable and would have resulted in jail immediately. So he knew the
So when I break the law, I
consequences,
break
right?
all the laws, right?
All of them. Yes. So, but he sat there through the experience, punishing himself and feeling the shame, and that is more of a sanction than I could have ever delivered, right? He's living through that. And so I didn't need to know about that. He needed to experience that, but I didn't need to know about that for it to matter to him. That is progress. That is change. That is progress. That kind of a feeling, what was going on within him, was maybe not something that would have happened 2 years prior, right? Fair?
That's new emotional autonomy that you taught me. Like being able to go into a place emotionally that I'd never had accountability or cared. That was the thing. This is the first person I ever reported to.
Right, that you kept reporting
Right.
to. More than once or twice.
Right.
So is there anything in particular that I put my foot down on and insisted that he do? Yeah. So a week-ish into probation, he calls and leaves a voicemail for me over the weekend that says, I screwed up, I drank. I don't like it, I need your help. So I came in and I called him immediately and he said, did you get my voicemail? I said, yeah, you need to get in here now. We got some talking to do. And he said, okay, I'm on my way. I said, you better hurry. So he came, and were you sweating a little bit? Like, ooh.
Oh yeah, I told my dad, because I called my dad, I was like, I gotta get there now. I remember doing the whole, like, I love you guys, just know that no matter what happens, like, I'll be thinking about you. And,
Go back to prison, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, and saying goodbyes to make sure Anthony knows his daddy loves him, and please write me, send me money, please, I know you guys are broke, but just send me something.
It's money on my books. So he comes in, and another supervisor at the time and I pretty much cornered him physically in the office. I was sitting in that chair right there. He was sitting in front of me, and right next to the door, and she was in the door, and I gave him a choice. He swears I had handcuffs on the desk. Y'all, we don't use those as props. I did not have handcuffs on the desk.
You had
Truly.
emotional handcuffs.
Maybe. I gave him the choice. I said, we're not going to do this. We're not going to volley back and forth with your life. You got a choice to make, and you're going to make it right now. You're going to choose 6 months sober living, and we're going to take you there tonight, not a day short of 6 months, or we're going to go to jail right now. What do you want?
May I?
Please.
The way that was framed to me was, you ready to go back? Was it worth it? You got 4 more years to do. And then there was an or afterwards that I'd never heard. I'd always faced that doom and gloom and knew, okay, you screwed up, they're gonna dunk you on your head, and see you later. That was presented to me, and I felt defeated, and that's where those handcuffs came on, was I can't do this, I'm a loser, I'm a failure. They made good and bad, and I'm just bad. And then they said, or you can try this program, or you can go into this house, and you can work the program the way they ask you to work it. And that was
Surrender.
something new. Yeah, that was
Or
something
you can
new.
just surrender finally, right?
Yeah.
And just do the things. Stop resisting the things and just do the things. Can you do that? Do you want to try?
Yeah.
And I remember, and I'm going to talk, I remember you sitting in that chair, and he leaned forward, and you put your head in your hands, and you cried, and you said, I can't. I'm not going to make it. Can you make it to tomorrow? Because we can talk tomorrow about the next day. Can you make it to tomorrow? Can you make this decision right now, and we'll deal with the rest later? And he's like, fine, I guess I'll try it. You'll do it. We'll do it together, one day at a time.
I'm pretty sure it sounded like
Perhaps.
Tell me more about your relationship with her versus the other authority figures in your life. What worked for you because of her versus?
I don't want to speak ill of anyone because no one ever did anything wrong. It was just something, her ability to speak to me as a man, like a father, a son, like as a human being. I was a stakeholder to her. She needed me because she needed a safer community, and if her community was going to be safer, then I had to get with the program. And she spoke to that in me. She treated me like a human. And whenever I called and I said, these things are not going the way I need them to go for me to be successful, she said, well, what can you do? How can we work through this? How can I help you, and how can you help yourself? She didn't throw a bludgeon over my head, well, you make it work or we're done. I never heard that. I work with parolees and probationers today, and I hear things like, I'm sick of you doing this, I'm gonna send your butt back if you don't blah, blah, blah. And I never heard that come out of her mouth. Or even I knew that if I messed up, it was lights out, but that's not the message that was being sent to me. It was, you can do this, and we can help each other create a better place.
You know, I stood in his living room hundreds of times with a probation banner across my chest on my bulletproof vest and a gun on my right side and gear and handcuffs, and we could still talk. You didn't see that in me. You saw a person that was trying to help you with a job to do, right?
Right.
Did you see and did you feel on probation that split? You know I've got a job to do, but you also truly came to believe that me or anybody else that worked in my office was a person?
The way that my thinking changed, I can sum it up in this. My whole life I believed that cops were there to lock people up, like me and those I loved. And I realized when I got my brain well, that police are there to protect me and protect others and keep our community safe. Law enforcement is there to protect and to guard people from danger. And that's how I saw you. I saw you as someone that was there to protect my hopes and you really wanted to see me be a father and be somebody that had goals. And it was undeniable. The whole department was like that.
That's how we operate as a collective, I believe. You know, our department, we work, Stephanie and I, as probation officers, we work with this panel of incredible, caring, giving human beings that come to work every day with our hearts on our sleeve to try to do the best we can as a team to help other people who are suffering around us and in our community. That's what we do. Those are our values. And we sacrifice a lot with our families. We sacrifice a lot with our hearts and our minds every day. And it's good work. It's important work.
So Justin, you mentioned earlier that you are still sober today. What does that look like for you? What does that really look like for you?
So it's challenging. It's still challenging to talk about today. So I had almost 8 years of sobriety, and things got really good for me. And I started working alongside of criminal justice teams with doctors. I had a really great position in the community, and people would say to me, "Well, why don't you just have a drink? I don't understand. You don't look like a drug addict, you know." Eventually, I ended up drinking some champagne at a black tie event with my wife, and my drinking never really got out of control. I think I probably drank for about 18 months, just trying to drink normally. But what had happened whenever I did that is I compromised a value of mine, and then I continued to compromise more and more values, and it brought me back to a point where I was like, hold on, this isn't serving me well. So I picked up a chip on 9/29/2016, so today I have 2 years of continued sobriety. It was really hard to share that in the early stages of coming back into sobriety because of the stigma that you have to have this, decade before you can be someone who's has value in the world of recovery. But it's about a quality of that day. What have you done that day spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and altruistically that really kind of defines your ability to create change? And so that is the longest version of my addiction, trying to justify a drink that I think I've ever given. But so yeah, I drank after 7 years. I got 2 years today. I work hard in my program. I got tons of service commitments. I'm just involved. I'm head over heels in love with sobriety again. Sobriety for me is a living, breathing organism. It's powerful. It's beautiful, and I love it.
You told me something the other day, I'm going off script here, about that relapse and how it was somewhat necessary for you. I remember when you told me about it. We'll go into a little bit more. He's clearly off probation now, okay? He's chosen to stay connected with me, and that's been totally okay with me. I remember when he told me about this relapse, it was really hard for him, and he did not tell me immediately, because I think he pined for a really long time of like, what do I say? I don't want to let her down.
I remember now what I need to say about the relapse.
Please
May
say
I
it.
please interrupt you?
Please say it.
So when I picked up and drank at that New Year's Eve gala, my wife said, "You could bring back champagne, I won't be mad at you." She gave me permission. And that's really all I wanted. I wanted permission to be able to make a decision of my own and not have this like punitive measure. And I did that, and there was no punitive measure, right? I made the choice, and then eventually over time, I realized, hold on, alcohol and other substances, they're not enhancing my life. What brought me back to sobriety was my wife was like, you better get your life together, get out of the house and go figure it out. So I went back to Flagstaff, and that's when I remembered about my brother and different things like that, the whole deal. And I was standing in front of a gas station with a friend of mine who I met in 2007, he's always been there for me. And he was looking at me, and I was crying a hot mess, ready to beat anybody up who even came into my zip code, kind of. And he looked at me and he said, "Do you want a drink?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I'll watch over you, and I'll make sure you don't get in trouble and you don't do anything stupid. I'll keep you safe." And when he said that, I said, that's not the answer, though. And I just needed that permission to know that if I wanted to, I could, it would be okay, but I really didn't have that desire. I just wanted to change the way that I felt. I just didn't want to have to face the fear of losing everything that mattered to me, because I'd never really had anything that mattered. So
it was for you, how you articulated the other day was that the alcohol itself wasn't his problem. That's right, it wasn't his problem. It was how his brain starts firing and making decisions when he drinks that is the problem. So alcoholic, I don't know, that's totally on you. That's totally up to you. But a physical dependence on alcohol, I don't know. That's his to figure out, right? Interesting, after all that time, the exploration still is unfolding new things for him.
Thank you. Thank you both so very much. We still have 10 minutes, and we want to spend the next 5 minutes opening the questions to the floor. We've asked quite a few that we kind of thought were important, but does anybody else have any questions that they might want to ask either Justin or Summer? And if not, that's totally fine too. We've really enjoyed this dialogue. Just talking and sharing both of your personal stories has been huge to us. I guess I actually did have one more question that you kind of touched on. When you're not on probation anymore.
No.
So what is it when Summer's not around, when any of the authority figures in your life kind of, what it influences your good and bad choices?
To sum it up really quickly and succinctly, today I have a purpose and I have a value that I didn't have before. A sense of purpose and belonging, a sense of worth to others and to myself that I built over a decade or more. And I think that sense of worth and purpose is there because we were talking about how I still have to call her. Like, I still have to tell her things are good and when things are bad, because she was there in the early stages. And those people, those relationships, as we know, those are the things that add joy to our lives, and that's what makes us live longer and be healthier, or those bonds of trust that you build with other humans. Those relationships are the things that add worth and add value to me. To sit here and think that you people care about my story, that gives me a real sense of purpose and belonging in the world today.
How does gratitude play into that?
So to me, gratitude is a demonstration, an outward demonstration of something inside that I appreciate. And so whenever I walk and talk and live and breathe this correctional professional that I am today, I feel like I'm showing that back to the people who helped me, to the correctional professionals that believed in me, like Officer Glenn and Probation Officer Glenn. It's not just one fold, it's like 10, 20 fold. Whenever one person believes in you, and then it's crazy. Last night I got introduced to the president of this association, and it was like an honor to do those types of things. That sense of worth and that sense of purpose and belonging, I'm not gonna roll the dice on that. There's no reason.
Can we pass out the thank you notes?
So I had some index cards that were filled out by some of the men in my program. I shared with them that I was coming here and I wanted to bring a little piece of them with me. So I transcribed them onto these thank you cards. And I edited them a little bit because they had a lot to say. So I kind of gave you guys a snapshot there. How many is there, Stephanie?
Probably 7 or 8.
So would anyone care to read out loud one of their cards to see if it's meaningful?
Come on, we gave you candy.
Who's our courageous community?
I know y'all are hungry, but we gave you candy.
Marcus will do it.
Just one.
So one thing that our chief probation officer talks to us at meetings every single time is that reflection of gratitude, and just the physical act of being thankful changes your brain.
Okay, it says, I've been blessed in that the people that have helped me pre-release and post-release have really good positive attitudes. It's truly helped me adjust and transition from prison. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time and effort.
Thank you. Can we get someone else?
You get to keep that and take that home with
And
you.
yes, please do keep these.
That is yours.
The knowledge I gain here helps me maintain the alcohol condition. Knowledge is power only if you wield it properly.
Does anybody have one more that they think is worth reading out loud?
I appreciate the opportunity parole gave me instead of sending me back to prison, putting me in treatment that I know I needed.
Thank you. I know that was impromptu and we really appreciate you participating in that. Okay, Summer. Is there anything in particular that you want to share with us to wrap this up?
Yep, we're going to church right now.
Woo woo.
We all ready?
You must forgive me. I'm usually pretty good off the cuff, but this is my heart and soul. So I have to read this because I can't miss anything for you. So I don't know if you feel the same, but this career that we are all in is not for the weary. What we do is incredibly hard work. We're surrounded by tragedy, trauma, dysfunction, and self-destruction all day, every day. But let me ask you the same question that I ask my clients when I meet them for the very first time. Do you view probation as a resource or a consequence? Your perception of what you do matters. I believe we choose to get up every day and keep showing up every day because somewhere inside of us, we want to make a difference and be a beacon of light for someone else. We believe people can change, and we want to help people learn how to stop suffering and just live a better life. We know we can make a difference, but it feels overwhelming most of the time, right? It's a lot. But it all starts with your mindset. This leads me to ask you, if you knew with absolute certainty that you would make a difference in one person's life, and you could be a piece of someone's change story, just like I've been, would your sacrifices be worth it, and would you do it? If you knew ahead of time that today was that day, would you embrace this mindset shift right now and do something completely different and vulnerable? So I stand here encouraging you and challenging you to pause every single day and tell yourself, today's gonna be that day. Because it will be. You might not know it. You might not get an opportunity to be a part of the daily like I've been, but it is that day. Every day is that day. Make an effort to show up for someone. Take a vested interest in another human being and walk their journey with them. Empower someone and believe in someone when they don't believe in themselves and they don't know how. Treat someone with dignity and ask about their families. Ask about what matters to them, not what matters to you in your case file. Just a question or two. Tell them that you believe in them. And remember, sobriety and compliance with court orders, it might be a probation requirement and it's very important, but it's not a person's identity, you guys. You can have all of those non-negotiable court things right alongside of dignity. They can and do coexist. "12 years ago, I saw Justin on paper, and my first impressions were wrong about him. I was wrong. My beliefs of him quickly changed when I saw him sitting in that chair in my office in tears, looking at the floor with his head in his hands. He was full of desperation. It occurred to me he was broken, a broken human. This was not possibly what he truly wanted for himself. Who wants that? Nobody wants that for themselves. I needed to show him that he was worth changing. I changed my perspective and I saw him as a man and a son and a father, a human being who was suffering and who had tormented himself with his own choices for so long. I then saw his humanity beneath the surface of his behavior, and I wanted him to see that too. 3 months into sober living, he said to me, "It's Christmas. I haven't been out of jail for Christmas in like 9 years. What do I do?" Can you imagine that? It broke my heart. I saw things in him he didn't believe existed, so I chose to bring those things out, make them bigger, and put them right in front of his face to remind him of what was there. For example, He obviously has tremendous leadership ability. So I offered him opportunities in the community to shine and to mentor others by speaking at community DUI impact panels. He obviously ran with those leadership and public speaking gifts. And he's using that platform in his daily work today to give back. He now operates from a place of service and doesn't take. That's really big life stuff. That's like bigger, that's existence kind of meaning, right? So when probation was over, Justin wasn't cured because there was nothing wrong with him. But he was ready to fly. He was ready to fly on his own. So despite being off paper, Justin has chosen to stay connected with me. He called me when he was getting married, and my husband and I, we both showed up. He called me when his mother passed away, and I was there, I showed up. He called me when he moved to Phoenix and he was reaching for this new job that he totally did not believe he deserved, that was a complete pipe dream, and I praised him. He calls and he shared the birth of his youngest 3 children and all of his wife's successes with me. I adore her. She is wonderful. We call her a saint. And I answer. He called me when he got that new job that he didn't believe he deserved, and I celebrated big with him. He invited me to come see his program in the prison, and he wanted to introduce me to the men in his program, and I showed up. I went. He shamefully told me about his relapse, and I remember he told me in person last year, outside of the prison, and he hung his head and he was kicking rocks with his foot, and he kept it really simple. And I reminded him, you can stand up and you can keep going, or you can live there. It's up to you. But that vulnerability is worth celebrating. Do it. Just do it. It's okay. It's part of your journey. Just do it. He calls me still to this day and will periodically thank me for still just being here 12 years later. I am so proud of all that he has chosen to do for himself and for others, and I'm forever going to show up for him when he calls, not only because he deserves it, and because he tells everyone when they say, who is this? Oh, this is Summer Glenn. We're changing the world together. He did that yesterday. But also because that's just who I am. And that is what I believe to the core of my being. And that could be my purpose. I don't know. I'm probably going to be working on figuring out what that whole purpose of life thing is for the rest of my life, like the rest of you all. I believe in everything that we do as probation officers to show up for every single day. I believe that all those things are important, and I'm proud to walk alongside of each and every one of you. So on behalf of my team here today, we are grateful for your time, for your attention, and for showing up for us today. You guys, we had to bring extra chairs in. We had to force all of you to sit up here with us. So thank you so much for showing up for us today.